Lowe's knows how to help you get the most out of your store run. That's why members save more with MyLowe's Rewards. Earn points towards MyLowe's money on eligible purchases. Get access to member-only deals and free member gifts. Plus, unlock free standard shipping when you reach Silver Key status. So what are you waiting for? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Today on CityCast Boise, bird flu is in Idaho. But how worried should you be? This isn't your typical seasonal flu, and scientists are keeping a close eye on it, even though there haven't been any confirmed human cases in our state. We're breaking down what makes this virus different, who's at risk, and why you should be avoiding sick birds on the Greenbelt. It's Wednesday, February 12th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Joining me today is Dr. Christine Hahn, the state epidemiologist and medical director with the Division of Public Health at the State Department of Health and Welfare. Thank you so much for taking time to be here today.
You're welcome.
So, Dr. Hahn, just to really jump into it, what makes avian flu different from the yearly flu viruses that we see every year? Why is it making headlines?
Yeah, so as you said, we do see influenza really peak every fall and winter, right? So why is this influenza any different? The difference is this is sort of a cousin of the seasonal flu, if you will, that we see every year. It is an influenza virus, but it's different enough that people haven't generally been exposed to it, and the concern is we have no immunity to it and could get more severely ill. And that is what has been seen with this H5, as we call it, as this H5 bird flu when it's been reported in other countries, is that about half the people reported with this condition have died. So a lot of concern about it. That's not what we're seeing in the United States. I want to be clear about that, but that's why we're seeing so much alarm about this possibly getting into the human population.
So that is a significantly higher fatality or mortality rate than our normal flu. Like what is the mortality rate? I know it can fluctuate for like the yearly flu we see.
Yeah, so the mortality rate, like you say, can fluctuate quite a bit. It's important to know that in young people, it's extremely rare to die of the flu, except for tiny babies, maybe whose immune systems aren't fully developed. But the older you get, the higher your chances of dying of influenza. Unfortunately, our immune systems start to weaken, and you can see death rates much higher, especially among elderly who are hospitalized.
So what do we know so far about how this H5 virus is spreading, and where are people most likely to be exposed?
Yeah, so this virus certainly came into the United States. It's been well documented from migratory birds coming from probably through different ways. In Idaho, we live in what's called the Pacific Flyway, or part of birds that are coming down from Alaska through Canada, and they kind of migrate every year down the coast and through parts of Idaho and down, and some of them will fly all the way down into Central and South America and so forth. So along that flyway, we know that birds do carry sometimes different strains of influenza, and this bird flu that we're worried about now seems to have come into North America in 2021 and was documented throughout the United States starting in 2022.
I've seen a lot of headlines, lots of discussion on different forums online about how this flu can be transmitted, how people are getting it. Can it be transmitted? It's avian flu. We've known it's been in cow herds and in birds. Can it be transmitted through products like raw milk or eggs or other animal products?
Well, we do believe there's a reason to be aware that especially raw dairy products could be a source. For example, there have been domestic cats that have been linked to eating raw pet food or drinking raw milk, whether that's on a dairy farm or even people that purchase raw pet food for their animals. So that suggests that raw, uncooked foods could potentially be a source of infection. Now, for people, we haven't seen that documented. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but for people, we believe they're at greater risk if they are caring for or near infected birds or other animals.
And how closely is Idaho tracking the current avian flu outbreaks and what kind of trends are you seeing?
Yeah, so we are tracking this very closely. A lot of our information does come from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they publish regularly any new infected chicken flocks, backyard flocks, cattle, so those are dairy herds. And they also even track detections in wild animals, which have been detected throughout the country, including in Idaho.
And what kind of confirmed cases have we seen in Idaho so far? And any confirmed human cases even passing through, or has that not happened here yet?
We've not had any documented human cases of bird flu in Idaho. We are continuing to do testing for it. Our state public health lab can test for it and is actually getting samples every week. They get samples from clinicians and hospitals around the state of anybody testing positive for influenza, so they can check and make sure it's not the bird flu. And so we do keep a close eye and have not seen it in humans yet. That said, we do know that we've had over 30 infected dairy herds in the state. Our State Department of Agriculture very closely works with the dairies and the Dairymen's Association to make sure that those animals are taken care of, that milk from them is diverted from the food supply until there's recovery and testing shows that the dairy is free. And we've also had some backyard poultry operations and at least one commercial poultry operation that has been impacted already by this bird flu. Unfortunately, birds tend to die at very high rates, and they are generally depopulated to try to prevent this from spreading even further to other poultry flocks.
And how do you, within the state of Idaho, coordinate? You know, you talked about federal agencies like the USDA. How do you coordinate when monitoring outbreaks like this?
We participate in what's called One Health calls during these kinds of situations. So One Health refers to the kind of the intersection between human health, animal health, and the environment. And we'll have USDA, CDC, sometimes FDA, depends on the situation, state health departments, others, all working together to try to make sure that we're coordinating our response. So we've been having these One Health calls with folks from CDC, from USDA, and other agencies. And it's really helpful. We all work together to try to make sure that from our side, that people are staying safe and are also being informed about the risks.
With the administrative changes happening, that it's making headlines at the CDC and other federal agencies, has that impacted how Idaho receives information about outbreaks or responds to outbreaks?
Yeah, I'm pleased to see that, as best I can tell, the websites with bird flu information are continuing to be updated. I think because it is an emergency situation in this country with especially the poultry industry, with the animal industry, I think USDA has continued to update their sites. That said, some of the calls that we had been having, some of those have been put on hold until things can be evaluated, and I'm hopeful that those get started up again soon. But we do have less opportunity for discussion because of some of the temporary holds on these kinds of communications.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace, or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
You mentioned this is an emergency situation. I kind of would like if you can give me a bit of a temperature check, like no pun intended, I guess. Like compared to past avian flu outbreaks, is this one more or less serious than we've seen before, and why?
Yeah, so bird flu is definitely in the domain of the agricultural officials. So please bear in mind that that's not my area of expertise, but I will say that I am aware, that poultry industry has been impacted in the past by these kinds of outbreaks, and it's always a significant issue. We've all heard about the price of eggs. Everything's been going up, but it's particularly if you look at the price of eggs, they have really increased, partly because so many poultry operations have been impacted. So this is a big deal. It is also a new issue to find these viruses in dairy cattle. So there's a lot of changes going on in the ag world, and I know that they're working very hard to control this. On the people side, we're monitoring, we're staying aware, but the human cases that have occurred in the United States, and there have been 67 human cases, almost all of them have been mild illness with a mild upper respiratory illness, maybe some reddening of the eyes, cough, that kind of thing. Louisiana announced the first death due to bird flu, but these are not, most of the infections that have been reported have been quite mild. And we are not seeing any person-to-person spread, which is what would make us extremely concerned about this virus.
So, from your expert opinion, how concerned should the average Boisean be about the avian flu when they're reading these headlines, when we're, seeing all of these different stats and reports of deaths come through, our as we're doom scrolling?
Yeah, for sure. I see it as maybe everything in life, there's different levels of risk. If you are a dairy farmer right now, I'm sure you're very concerned about the impact on your herd. If you are a poultry producer, or like me, you have a small backyard flock, I have some chickens, we worry about them getting potentially infected. And if they were to become infected, we would be very careful about being near them. We would wear protection when we handled the birds, et cetera, because it could potentially spread. There's another level, which is people say, well, that's not me. I buy my milk at the grocery store. I buy my eggs at the grocery store. I'm not near wild birds. I'm not a wild bird hunter. I don't see myself around these animals. In that case, the risk is very low right now, and I really just urge Boiseans to be aware and up to date. I think the one thing that for some people might be a consideration is if you do consume raw dairy products or raw animal products to consider the risk of avian flu before you do that. We have not had any raw milk dairies impacted in Idaho, but I know in California they have had that. So it's just important to stay aware and up to date.
So, what are some precautions people should take if they do have backyard chickens? Or let's say, I mean, it's Boise, there are geese everywhere. So, let's say,
Right.
you're walking the green belt and you come in contact with some wild birds that maybe seem sick. What should people do?
Yeah, so we'll start with the folks with backyard chickens. The best thing you can do is to try to set them up in such a way that they're not mingling with wild migratory waterfowl. So let's say you have a property and you have a little pond in your backyard where wild ducks and geese may land. I would urge you to keep your chickens away from that area until this all resolves. For those who are hunters, there are great recommendations on hunter websites about not shooting or consuming wild birds that have been sick or that appear ill. So, or if even you're near a flock and they appear ill, the best advice is to stay distant and not get involved. Your example about the green belt, which I know, that's always hard to see a sick animal and not try to assist it in some way. But again, for your own health and safety, we do recommend that you stay away from it. Fish and Game for a while, I think, was taking reports from the publics about sightings. I am not sure if they still have that like on their website, if there's a way you can report it. So Fish and Game is aware.
So if someone in the area thinks that they've been exposed, maybe through, access to dairy or backyard chickens or that sick goose on the green belt, what symptoms should they watch for? And then what kind of testing is available?
Yeah, so the symptoms are not that different than the regular flu, if you will. The one thing that's been noticed a little different with these dairy-associated cases is a lot more red eyes, kind of that conjunctivitis that you can get from all sorts of things, but that seems to be particularly prominent with this bird flu. But, cough, sore throat, fever, muscle aches, those kinds of things would be what you'd watch out for. And there is testing available. Now, I mentioned our state lab already, but for most people, what's more practical is that commercial laboratories some commercial labs do offer this testing. And if you go in to seek any sort of evaluation, specimens could be sent to just through a commercial lab for testing.
So from your perspective as the state epidemiologist, what are the most important things that Idahoans should know about this avian flu outbreak?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is this is a significant event. It's a natural event. We know that birds carry influenza. They always have. And we've always worried about flu jumping from birds to people. So this is something that we always have been watching not only in the animal industry, wildlife animal specialists, but also human health. On the other hand, this is a significant event. I think if it didn't happen right during COVID, I think we would have all heard about this back in 2022, 2021, 2022, when they started detecting this new virus in the United States. I think it kind of got buried in the news because we were already in the middle of a pandemic. But this is a significant event, and we're very concerned about not just the health of our wild bird populations, but of the poultry industry, of the dairy industry, and of course, human health. So I would just urge people to pay attention to it. We don't know. There's no way to predict yet. Our science just isn't there if this is really going to turn into a big human health threat. We just don't know, but know that people are monitoring this. CDC, USDA, state health departments, local health departments, Fish and Game, are all aware and are tracking this, and you can find great information on their websites.
Well, Dr. Hahn, thank you so much. I know you are so busy, so I really appreciate you taking the time to break this down and give us some usable information.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. Very, very glad to do this and happy to do so again in the future if it'd be helpful.
And just a quick note, since we recorded this chat with Dr. Hahn last week, there's been a 68th confirmed human case of bird flu, this time in Nevada. The CDC confirmed a dairy worker was infected with a new strain of the flu and has since recovered. That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, make sure and share it with your friends so they know that they shouldn't be getting too close to the Greenbelt geese. We'll be back tomorrow morning with local romantic date ideas just in time for Valentine's Day. Catch you then.